Hello, everybody. My name's Gerald, and you are listening to the Reclaim Your Voice podcast, where we get to set the stage for your voice to be at its greatest potential. This is the beginning of season 2, and I'm glad because, I kind of changed up the set a little bit, but this is still the place for us to help you get your singing from unsure to unforgettable. Here, we give you the tools to help you to stop losing your voice, break your bad singing habits, and find your unique sound. Let me just remind you, for those of you that are joining in for the first time, who this podcast is for. If you are singing every week and you use your voice regularly, but you lose your voice after you've finished using your voice, this podcast is for you. If you are trying to better your singing, but find yourself plateauing in your practice and not getting better, this podcast is for you. If you've always struggled with building confidence in your own voice and aren't quite sure how you'll be able to hit the goals that you have for your own music, then this is for you. And if you secretly believe that you can't sing, then this podcast is for you. Now, to start off season 2, I actually wanted to introduce a new little segment. I'm going to try it out this time and see how it works. And I want to call it Singing Trauma Story Time. So what I did is, I put out a little bit of a call on socials to see who wanted to share a little bit of their singing trauma. Because the reality is, a lot of the reason why a lot of us don't sing is because there was a trauma that happened down the line that changed our singing forever. Some of us sing differently. Some of us end up not singing at all since that trauma. And so what I wanted to do is just kind of let down the guard a little bit and allow us to be honest with each other. So if you want to share your singing story time, definitely comment under this video, send me a message on the socials, and let's get started with our first singing story time for the Reclaim Your Voice, our singing trauma story time for the Reclaim Your Voice podcast. This one comes to us anonymously, and it reads the following. I sang at church while my voice was changing, and I cracked the loudest crack of my life. It was so loud and so embarrassing, it caused me to stop singing for 2 years. Wow. That's crazy. I'm going to assume that it was puberty that was happening. And some of the cracks that can kind of happen when their voice is changing, and one of the cracks was so loud that it caused the person to stop singing for 2 years. And I'm just going to be transparent and say that this singing trauma story time is me. So I tried to play it off, but it is actually me. I sang at church. Like, I used to be the go-to guy when it comes to singing solos at church, and people used to cheer me on when I was very young. I was singing at lots of church concerts all the time. In fact, I had an entire lexicon of songs that I would usually go to make sure that people were the most impressed. And my voice was starting to change around the 8th grade, and around that time I was starting to sing lower, but I wasn't able to sing as high as I was before. And one time I came to church, and I'm about to sing one of those go-to songs, and I ended up cracking. And the crack, it was like one of those cracks where it's like, oh, like there's this video of this tenor that's singing like some opera song or some classical piece, and their crack was like really, really big and long. That's exactly what happened to me, and I was mortified. I was so mortified, and so mortified that I had stopped singing for 2 years. The funny thing is that what was happening to me was completely normal, but because it was so embarrassing for me, and also because I was so used to getting praise from people, I was now in a place where my singing was no longer getting me praise. And a lot of us have been in the place where we have to find a reason for singing that supersedes praise, that is greater in reasoning than just somebody's gonna pat you on the back to say that you sang well or that you sounded good. And for me, that was my entire reason for singing. I loved, singing at church, and I loved God, but I was definitely at that point singing so that other people could pat me on the back. And it wasn't until I stopped singing for 2 years that I found out that I needed to change my reasoning. But I wouldn't have had that if I didn't have that one singing trauma. But that was just my little singing trauma that I wanted to share with you. If you have your own singing trauma, definitely comment under this YouTube video where the Reclaim Your Voice podcast, the video version is. I'll read it here, and I can give you my thoughts on it, and kind of level the playing field for everyone that's out there. So really today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about communication. Oh, sorry, not communication, about connection. It's something that I've alluded to a little bit in season 1 of the Reclaim Your Voice podcast. And this is simply the concept of connecting with your audience. And I wanted to kind of outline some of the reasons why you're not connecting with your audience. So the name of today's episode is Lost in Translation, bridging the gap between you and your listeners, why it's not working. Let's kind of get into some of these reasons, and if you are resonating with them, definitely comment. Let's kind of keep the conversation going in the comments. The first reason why your singing is getting lost in translation, why you're not connecting with your audience, is because the songs that you're choosing don't relate to your audience and you're not making it relevant to them. I know this firsthand, especially as a worship leader at church, but I've also seen it, when it's time to do sets, in different places. Because I'm a musician, there's a lot of songs that are on my radar. There are jazz songs, there are church and gospel songs, there are R&B songs, there are pop songs. There's so many different songs that I have running through my brain. And when it's time for me to perform, and when it's time for singers to perform, often what we end up doing is we go to the songs that we love the most. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when we don't understand our audience, when we don't understand our audience's needs, what our audience is used to listening to. So say if you're opening for a singer, they have an R&B crowd, and you do a whole bunch of rock songs, you're gonna lose the crowd, right? And it's not even like a big platforms that we're talking about. We're even simply talking about singing karaoke with your friends. You're wanting to create connections with them, and the reason why I even talk about connection is because people that are unforgettable vocalists don't just want to sing to impress people, like I was telling you about in my singing story time. You want to move past impression to actually create connection, because at the level of connection, you are creating those long-lasting, impactful moments that people will remember for the rest of their lives. And that's what makes you an unforgettable vocalist, right? So if you're trying to create this connection, you need to know what songs your people relate to. And this is not simply so that you can actually choose the right songs. This is simply so that you can relate the songs to your audience in whatever way. I know for me, often when I feel like an audience isn't connecting with the song, because I play the keys and sing at the same time, I often find myself bringing the music down and talking to my audience about the subject matter of the song. And it can kind of break the fourth wall a lot. But for me, I find it very important that the people that I'm connecting to and that I'm singing for, singing with, and you can especially see when people are connecting when they start singing along with you, right? And another fun thing I love to do is, because I'm also a choir director, I love teaching the parts to people. And that's actually something that you can do in terms of teaching parts to people. But if you don't seek to make the songs relevant to your people, you're not going to actually connect with them. And a lot of us are so afraid of being rejected that we don't actually go the extra mile to actually connect with people. We kind of just stay in our own little world. Yeah, right. And that's actually the second reason why you don't connect with your audience and why your singing is getting lost in translation, because of the lack of vulnerability that you are experiencing due to the fear of rejection. A lot of people that don't sing wouldn't really understand this, but singing, if you allow it to be, singing is a very vulnerable act, especially when you're sharing songs and sharing words and singing things that are from your heart. If you're emoting with your voice and giving people the emotions that you're experiencing in real time, that process is extremely vulnerable. And the great thing about vulnerability is that it levels the playing field. Everyone in the world has vulnerabilities. Everyone in the world has different things that make them tick, things that make them feel weak. And when singers decide to show that side of them, that weakness, it allows the people that feel those deep and intense emotions that are in your audience to actually connect with you. But we're never going to actually show that side of us unless we get over the fear of rejection. And it's easier said than done, but this is just simply to to shine a light on this, because a lot of us think that because we are good singers that people should, and we're entitled for people to connect with us. But if we're not showing our humanity, people aren't actually going to connect with us. They're just going to be impressed by us. And I said that in a prior episode. In fact, that episode is really why I really wanted to expand on this subject. The fear of rejection is very powerful, and fear in general, if you allow it to be, it can be very powerful, because it will cause you to not put yourself in a situation where you will experience what you are fearing. And if you are fearing rejection, it will cause you to be out of spaces that you are called to, even though you're called to them, because you don't want to be rejected. When a singer's voice is rejected, it's one thing, but when the singer themselves and their story and the emotions that they're bringing are being rejected, that's a completely other different level of rejection, right? And that's partly why, and this is totally a segue, but that's partly why I'm reading the book, The Awe of God. It's about a concept called the fear of the Lord. You know, I'm from a Christian background, so that's something that is really big on my heart right now. In fact, I have the book right behind me because it's so important to me, because I realized that in order to get over the fear of people, I need to fear God and to be in awe and reverence of God more than I have other people. And for those of you that aren't even, from a Christian background, if you put the importance of people's praise at the highest pinnacle point in your life, if that's something that you cry out for, like again, my singing story time, when people reject you, it's gonna be like huge, right? And when you find yourself experiencing that rejection, it ends up putting you in the place where you avoid those spaces so that you don't get rejected. And when you avoid those spaces, you can't actually be of service to the people that you're called to with your voice. Okay, right. The third reason why your people aren't connecting with your singing is because they can't sing with you. And this is something that I've had to, even maneuver in terms of songwriting and also song choice. Not every song is sing-alongable. Hear me out. All of us have a little part of ourselves that want to impress people. And it is not my job to tell you how much you decide to appease that part of you. However, if you decide that you want to impress people, know that not everybody is as good a singer as you are. Even in terms of song choice and capability of song, the more that you decide to impress people, the less likely people are going to be able to sing with you, right? And the less likely people are able to sing with you, the less likely they are to actually join in the experience with you. It's why you see people like Jacob Collier, who uses like his wonderful talent to allow his audiences to sing. Pentatonics, they do the same thing. The audience sings with them, because when people sing together, that isn't a completely other experience. For those of you that have been in choirs, you know what I'm talking about. Like, singing with other people is such a connecting experience and a leveling experience that when you get people to sing with you, it's another level, right? But the thing is, when you're caught up in your own world and you're caught up in your own hunger for affirmation and for praise, you're not going to sense when you're losing your audience, right? And that type of that type of awareness only comes from actually putting yourself in the position to serve and not just be someone that is served when you are singing. Now, singing is a really great experience. You can really have some experiences that really feed you, but if you're going to only be there to be fed yourself, you're not going to serve others. And if you don't serve others, you're not going to connect with them. And if you don't connect with them, you're not going to really have people that resonate with what you do. And you're not going to make as much impact as you want to. And especially if you're listening to this podcast, you want to make an impact, right? Okay. Now this fourth one kind of rocked me a little bit when I read it, and definitely the fifth one, so definitely stay to hear that. But the fourth reason why you're not connecting with your audience is because your emotions have been shut off by a prior experience. And this is part of the reason why I want to talk more about our singing traumas and have those singing trauma story times, because when you have a trauma, and I'm not like a psychiatrist or anything like that, but I know singing. And when you have a singing trauma, right? And even when you have a trauma Like your body responds to traumas in very different ways. And sometimes we don't even realize that we are high functioning in the midst of being traumatized. So one of the symptoms of singing trauma is when you are singing, but you have I don't want to give away the fifth one, but let's kind of go there a little bit. It's when your emotions have been shut off and you have a hard time connecting with your own emotions. I recently had an experience that I realized that I needed to process, and even to go into process the emotions, I knew I felt sad about it, I knew I felt upset about it, but to actually go into feel the emotions, it took some digging. It took a lot of me looking my situation and my circumstance in the eye and actually being honest about how I felt about it. And I'm a big journaler, and with my clients, I get them to journal a lot. It's because especially with, when you've been disconnected and numb to an experience for so long, it can make you feel numb, and you don't end up feeling those emotions. And when you don't feel your emotions, when your emotions have been shut off, you're not going to convey that in your singing. It's the human aspects of our musicality, of our singing, that allow people to connect with us. If we can make the human experience accessible through our singing, we can actually get someone to connect with something that they could never do. It's the reason why when you look at a painting and it causes you to feel all of these emotions, it's like, oh my gosh, you're connecting with it. You can never paint a day in your life. I know that I am not a painter, but the emotion that it made you feel allows you to connect with the humanity of the artist. Right? And that's a lot of what people are looking for when they listen to music nowadays. They're looking for someone to understand them, right? And if you don't understand your own emotions, if you are numb to your own experiences, especially as a singer, it's going to cause you to disconnect from your own singing and from your own ability to even serve yourself by letting out your emotions. And it's a lot of the reason why people give up singing as well, is because it's like the joy of the experience has been sapped from them, and it's not their fault. It's simply there's a traumatic experience or a prior experience that totally shut off their emotions. Right? And that's part of the reason why we do the work here at Reclaim Your Voice, because we help people to get reconnected with their emotions, with that experience, that might have, shipwrecked their singing, and we allow people to sing through it. Right? Because especially if you're a singer, singing is not just something that is a hobby. It's something that it changes your world. It allows you to feel heard, because you're saying things that you can only say through singing. It's different if it were a hobby, but for a lot of singers, this is the way that they communicate their feelings. And a lot of people are shut off from their emotions and they don't know how to get it back. But I'm here to just simply turn the lights on for you and to bring that awareness for you so that you can see that, something's wrong. And that leads me into the fifth reason why you're not connecting with your audience. It's because you don't know how to actually express how you're feeling when you're singing. Now, a lot of people have that issue where they can't feel their emotions and they don't know how to put it out in their singing because they don't feel them. But then there are people that actually feel the emotions and they think that they're putting it in their singing, but it's not getting translated for some reason. They feel it in their head, but it's either their singing capabilities are limited or they're doing things that are not a complete reflection of how they actually feel, and they're being misconstrued and misunderstood simply because of the way that they're using their voice. Right? And that's simply why I like we're here on the Reclaim Your Voice podcast, to let you know that these things are going on. And if these are all issues that you are struggling with or have struggled with or do struggle with on the regular, and this is something that, especially if you are a career professional and you have been working away trying to get yourself away from the singing pain, right? I want you to actually book a call with me at reclaimyourvoice.ca/call, because I want you to not just know about this stuff, like be aware of this stuff. We want to actually get to the bottom of the roots of why you've been so disconnected from the singing experience and why you're not connecting with your audience. So if this is where you've been, I want you to go to reclaimyourvoice.ca/call. Let's have a conversation. And I really hope that you guys were really enlightened by this episode of the Reclaim Your Voice podcast. Definitely subscribe to this channel and 5-star this podcast, because this is the place where we help you to reclaiming my voice. I'm going to see you guys in another Reclaim Your Voice episode. And see you guys later, and you'll hear me later. Okay, bye.